everyone, and welcome to the Spirit Speaker Casey podcast. I am psychic medium Jamie Collins, and I'm excited tonight to have Miss Indira Grace on to talk about. Hopefully, I really feel like a few subjects I think that we could talk about, but I thought tonight we'd touch a little bit talk about death, end of life, doula, a little bit about Indira, Reverend Indira Grace Huerta is a New Thought minister, a certified death doula, a Reiki master and teacher, and a shamanic practitioner. Woo-wee. She holds a master's degree in teaching. She's in the Kansas City area and works as a volunteer coordinator for a local hospice company.
Yes.
Indira, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm glad to be here with you.
I'm excited about this conversation. In fairness, Indira and I have known each other for a few years, working metaphysical events. And we were at an event this past weekend, and she was kind of telling me what she was doing. And I was like, ooh, this could be interesting.
So it is interesting, I think. Yeah.
Just a little bit of background, Indira. How did you come about? I'm always curious about how people came about finding their spirituality, their spiritual abilities. I know you do readings as well, fantastic readings, angel readings. Can you give our listeners just a little bit of background about how you came into following your spiritual path?
Absolutely. I was born being able to see spirits, like most children, truly. I could see spirits. My grandfather died when I was about not quite 3 years old. And I remember playing with him, in my room long after he had, his physical body had been buried. And then it kind of, because I had watched, like over my sister's shoulder, I had watched a couple of horror movies. It kind of like waned. It was a little scary. And then when I was 10 or 11, my best friend died of spinal bifida. And I was very upset at her funeral because everybody was like celebrating her life instead of mourning our loss, because it was truly, I felt, our loss. But what I didn't understand then is that she was never supposed to live past the age of 1. And she ended up living to be 16. And she was my mom's best friend's daughter. So she was kind of, by association, my best friend. And because she had spinal bifida, I was her legs. She would make me jump and run and do cartwheels and make me describe to her what it felt like. And so she kind of lived physically vicariously through me. And so when she passed and we went to her funeral, I was devastated to see people laughing and celebrating her life instead of like sobbing like I was. Right. And I might have had a little bit of an outburst at her funeral. I might have yelled out like, "What is wrong with you people?" And she's gone and we've lost her forever. And I'm crying really, really hard. And that night she came to me and she was standing at the foot of my bed, standing. I had never seen Jolene stand before. And she was standing at the foot of my bed and she was telling me that she was okay. And it did frighten me. Yeah. The next morning, her mom called my mom and said, Is Indira okay? Jolene came to me in a dream and said that she scared her and I'm supposed to check on her.
Oh.
And it was then that my mom said, "You have abilities. Let's begin to work with those." And as you learned on Sunday, my mother was a very intelligent woman. She didn't have any college degrees, but she was a very, very intelligent woman. And so she began to help me build my practice. So I started at a very early age.
Wow. Oh
I'm
my
going to
God.
mute myself. I have a tickle. I'll be right. I'm just going to mute myself and cough, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, that's
Here we go.
amazing. Wow, wow. And
Mhm.
you, like myself, like you, I can still remember as a kid having that first experience with spirits. And it's true, you're scared, it's that unknown.
Mhm.
So that's wow, that's amazing. So after that visit from
Jolene.
Jolene,
Mhm.
Jolene,
Jolene. Mhm. Like,
Jolene,
think of, Dolly Parton's Jolene.
oh,
Jolene.
Jolene.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm, yep.
So did that ease up that fear, even though I know you're a kid and you're still kind of experiencing all of this? Did
Mhm.
that ease the fear or did that continue on?
It eased the fear, but then I realized, because kids are weird and kind of cruel, that I was a freak, like, having these abilities, you were seen as kind of a freak, by
Mhm.
your classmates. So I learned to shut it down so I could fit in.
Right.
Um, and so they actually kind of just went to sleep for a little bit until my 20s. Like, I
Okay.
did a little bit on the side, and my mom, she religiously took me to a tarot reader, and I would practice a little bit on the side, but I wasn't out like
Right.
I came out in my 20s.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it did not it it didn't the fear didn't stay forever. And
Okay.
and if I could so I just had the craziest experience last night that kind of, like, on this topic.
Uh-huh.
So, we're gonna be talking about being a death doula at some point tonight,
Yeah.
and or an end of life doula. And I was actually sitting vigil last night in a really big, it's a huge facility. And it's interesting because the hallways are kind of long, and they look like the hallways in that horror movie that had, like, Shelley Duvall, like,
Yeah.
I'm waiting
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
twins to come down
Oh
down the
yeah.
hallway.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I was there last night, and it was about midnight this morning, actually. And I was waiting at the front door for my relief, and because I had been there, most of the evening, and so somebody was going to come and sit from about midnight until 8 this morning. And all of a sudden, I hear a whisper, whisper, whisper in my ear, and I smell men's cologne.
Oh wow.
And I couldn't quite make out what they said, and instead of being afraid, like
Mhm.
like most people would be, I was like,
Right.
"I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. What did you say?" And and it was whisper, whisper, whisper again. And then it was like,
Uh,
and I was like, "Yeah, you're gonna have to talk a little bit louder because I'm not hearing you." And then I very, very clearly heard, "You'll see." And I had been, and the thing is I was exhausted. I have sat vigil every night this week. So Monday night I went and I sat from 10 to 6. And then Tuesday night I sat from 10 to 6. And then I have to go see my patients during the day. So I'm doing that. And so then Wednesday night I got called out to go sit from about 5 until midnight. And I was just tired. I was
yeah.
tired. I was angry. I was done. The
Yeah.
uncomfortable chairs in nursing homes they were getting the best of me. And
Yeah.
I'm just there being really, really impatient, waiting for my sweet relief, who is one of my dearest coworkers that I have. And I'm not mad at her. I'm just really impatient. And when I heard, you'll see, I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I don't know what you want me to see. And so I get in the car and I'm driving home. Finally, it's just after midnight. And there had been a terrible accident on the highway
Mhm.
about 5 minutes before I got there. And
Mhm.
had I not been delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed, that would have been me. And so they were
Yeah.
telling me, you'll see, like, we saved. And I think that what I missed was, we're saving your life. We're saving your life. That's what I think I could not hear.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm looking around there. I'm like, where are you? And it's this very distinctive men's cologne. And it was only where I was standing. I, like, walked around to see if it was like an air like an air freshener that had gone off or
Right.
something like that. No,
Right. Right.
right in the place where I was standing. And I kept coming back to like this little cylindrical space. And that's where the cologne was. And they were telling me, we're saving your life. And so I sometimes have to remind myself that these delays are not, it's not personal. There's a purpose to it. And
Yeah.
when I saw that really bad accident, I was like, sorry, I'm just hangry. Like,
It's so cool you brought up that story, because just a few days I don't even know, I don't know if it was online or I was reading about it somewhere in a book, I don't know, but that very thing that you talked about, spirit saving you, I was reading an article about that the stuck in traffic or the delay, is really our protection. And it makes me think of a time my brother was in law school down at MU in Columbia,
Mhm.
and he was supposed to come home that weekend. And so he's at home, he's on his way down to his car, and he sees smoke in the back seat of his car. And she's like, what in the
What?
world?
Yeah.
And long story short, it was a cigarette. I believe he had had an uncle who had been working on his car doing something, and his car caught on fire. Well, I can even remember back then, this is 20, 25 years ago, remember thinking that you weren't supposed to come home that weekend. You weren't supposed to be on the highway that weekend for whatever reason.
Whatever
You
reason.
weren't supposed to. And so I think it's a way that spirit, the universe, God, whatever your word is always looking out for us and
Yes.
protecting us in ways that we don't even think about, like the folks in 9/11 who were
Mhm.
delayed at home or didn't go to work that day. So,
Woke up with a bug, which
yeah.
I have to tell you, when I woken up with bugs and I feel like my life has been saved, I'm like, did somebody spit in my mouth? Like, how did this bug happen? Like, can we not, like, boundaries? Can
Yes.
like, get the flat tire? Don't make me sick. Like, what are we doing here? Because
I
I
always
just
say,
I
yeah.
don't want to know how they got me sick. Like, I just don't want to know how the germs were spread.
Yes, yes. I always say to spirit, can it just be gentle? Can you do it in a gentle way? You don't have to make it so rough, you know?
But I honestly think it's never gentle because we don't listen when it's gentle. We
Yeah,
argue. We are a
yeah.
stubborn species.
Isn't that the truth? Well, explain to the listeners. I think
Mhm.
it's so cool about the end of life doula. And it's actually something that I have um thought about, even looking into. But for us that don't know about it or have never heard that term, end of life doula, death doula, what exactly is that?
So just like we have birthing doulas who help bring the physical life into this experience, there are people who have are uniquely qualified. They have a lot of understanding and experience that death is not a medical failure. Death is not something that needs to be staved off as long as possible. That death is a natural part of the life process. The body knows how to be vital, it knows how to be alive, and the body knows how to decline and decay. It has all this natural intelligence within it. And when hospice was started about 40 years ago, then that's all that hospice has been around is 40 years. I'm older than hospice.
Wow.
And so once it was started, and many other cultures have a hospice like situation, a lot of Native American cultures already have things like death doulas, and because they understand that death is another rebirth. And that's why I brought up the birthing doulas. Death is, the way that I explain it to the families that I help is um, all that is happening is they're shedding the physicality of this life, and they're being reborn into their eternal one again. And because if by any religious standards there is an eternal existence outside of the physical. And so we're just helping them more gently as much as we can, more gently shed the physical existence through ritual, through prayer, through presence, through kindness, compassion, touch, silence, to make that decline and decay process as comfortable as we can, because death is inevitable. And the body, when the body begins the decay process, first, they stop eating, or they start the decline process. They may stop eating, or they're not eating as much. They stop with the intake. They stop with the output. They may have a lot of clarity. They may start talking about people that they haven't seen in decades because they've crossed over. And what we do is we normalize all of that for them and comfort them through it and tell them this is normal, and tell me about that person that you're seeing. And we hold hands. And then when the families are there as well, we explain the process. And so one of the beautiful things that happened to me just this week is that I showed up at one of my facilities on Monday night. So this is a patient that has been on my caseload as a volunteer coordinator in hospice. And now she is starting the decline process. And I get there, and she has two young teenage granddaughters who want to immerse their grandmother in as much love as she had immersed them in life. So they want to do that for her as she moves through the dying process. And I was like, this is beautiful. This is incredible. It's so wonderful. Do you have questions? And so I began to explain. They had a lot of questions about respiration, the breathing. And so I talked a lot about that. And I am not a nurse. I am non-medical. I do not give medical advice or any of that, but I have Google. I do know, and I work with hospice nurses all day long. I work with doctors all day long. So I pick a lot of information up. So I explained about the breathing. I explained about certain things that we're looking for that are clues, but not guarantees that we are getting closer to the end. And so they had a lot of really important questions, and they really wanted to make death as normal for them because they've never been around somebody who's dying. And they don't want to fear it anymore. And they especially didn't want to fear it with this grandma. Like, they were facing their fear of death, how Hollywood has taught them that death is supposed to look traumatic and, all the things. They're facing that so they can be the presence for their grandma, which was, to me, one of the most beautiful things in the world. Very courageous for these young teenagers to do. I don't know that I could have done that when I was a kiddo. I don't think that I have that kind of courage. So we did that. And then one of the things that I taught them is ritual. And I said, was your grandma a religious woman? And they said, more like faithful. And I said, do you think it would bring her peace to receive kind of a last rites blessing? And they said, yeah, we do. And I carry around with me 2 bottles of essential oils. One is frankincense and myrrh, and the other is spikenard. And spikenard is the essential oil that I believe it was Martha. It was Martha or Mary, one of Lazarus's sisters, anointed Jesus's feet with. And it was the spikenard oil, and it's got an amazing smell. And she said, I want to do that one. And so I walked her through the steps.
Oh, wow.
I said, you do this. You get to do this, and I will walk you through. And I showed her the different body parts that I anoint, which is the feet, the hands, and the head, why I do it, what they have to do with physically and spiritually. And then I told her kind of the prayers that I say, the words that I say. And She did it. She gave her first last rites as a 16-year-old
Oh,
girl on
wow.
Monday night for her grandma.
That's awesome. So you mentioned a little bit about hospice nurse and you. So what is the difference between the end of life doula and the hospice nurse? What are you doing differently than the nurse, or the nurse doing differently than you?
So first is education. They had to go through nursing school. I just went through a certification program. So they
Okay.
have a whole lot of medical background and medical knowledge. And they have so much more training in what they're looking for. And so, and the interesting thing is there's no difference between a hospice nurse and a nurse at the hospital. It is what your mindset is around the
Oh,
death and dying process. Nurses
okay.
typically who work in hospitals and doctors' offices are trained to keep them alive, keep them alive, keep them alive, and death is seen as a failure. Hospice
Mhm.
nurses come in with a different attitude that death is part of the medical process. It is part of the physical experience. And we are going to make them as comfortable as we can. And so, and I do want to talk about that in a second, but I want to go back to this. So they come in with a whole lot of medical information, of which
Okay.
I have about 1% that they've taught me. I look for when I go in. I don't determine if they're vigil appropriate. My nurses do that, and vigil simply means that we typically sit with them overnight when family can't be there,
Oh,
and
okay.
and
Yeah.
so a lot of times it's called an 11th hour angel too. And so we come in, like I said, overnights, typically for
Yeah.
an 8-hour shift, like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And that's when family can go home and get some sleep. It's almost like
Ah,
respite support. But I am
okay.
looking to see if they still have oral reflexes. So if I put a sponge with water, in their mouth, if they bite down on it, oral
Ah,
reflexes tell me that they've got some time. I'm looking for a radial pulse. If I can feel it and it's strong, um, I know that we still have probably some time. What my
okay.
nurses are doing is they're checking oxygen levels, saturation levels. They're
Wow.
checking blood pressure.
Okay.
They do Babinski reflexes, which is when you tickle the bottom of the feet to
Yeah,
see if
yeah.
their toes splay. We also are looking for discoloration, either on their face, typically their legs. It's called mottling, mottling, and it's a purplish, purple blue, even sometimes like a dark gray
Hmm.
discoloration that will appear on legs, hands, arms, and sometimes even their face. And that
Okay.
is also an indication that they're getting closer. And the thing I want to say about hospice is this is a very common misconception. We are not euthanasia practitioners. We
Mhm.
don't kill someone. What we do is once they start that active transitioning of end of life, the nurses and the doctors create a comfort kit based on the needs of the patient. So if the patient is allergic to morphine, we're not going to do morphine, but we're going to do something along the lines of morphine, maybe something like
Okay.
Dilaudid,
Yeah.
because it while they are not necessarily registering a lot of pain or discomfort, we know that if you go 6 or 7 days without food,
Yeah.
your body does have some discomfort to it. And so we want to make them as comfortable as possible. There's something called terminal restlessness. And it's basically when all of the nerves and muscles are firing at the same time in like your arms, your legs, your hands, and it's
Mhm.
can be very uncomfortable. So we give
Oh.
something like Ativan for that. That's
Oh.
typically in a comfort kit. And then the other thing that is often given, because as the body begins to shut down, the fluids begin to build up in the lungs,
Mhm.
and that's what creates that sound that a lot of people call the death rattle. That's
Mhm.
agonal breathing. See, I have paid attention. I don't have a medical degree, but I have paid attention, and so that is called agonal breathing. It's very, very normal, but to help open up those airways a little bit and to make the breathing more comfortable for them, they
Mm.
often are prescribed Levsin. So those are kind of the normal comfort kit that
Oh,
is prescribed for end of life. And so part of my job, because my nurses only maybe come in for about an hour of like my 8-hour shift or however long
oh,
I'm there,
yeah.
is to know what the prescription is, like what all of the, how often they're supposed to get it, to know the time frame of it, and to advocate with facility staff to make sure that they're getting the medication they need when they need it, to
Mm.
stay in front of any discomfort they may be having, to stay in front of terminal secretions or agonal breathing getting out of hand. And
Wow.
so I have, I keep notes on every patient, and
Yeah.
I'll be like, okay, every 2 hours, their last one was given at 9. So I should be expecting a facility nurse to come in around 11 to give their next med. So that is also part of my job. So it's
Okay.
education and support of the family.
Right.
And then I'm also just really sitting with the patient and providing that presence and that comfort, in holding their hand, making sure if they're holding on for a really long time, making sure that they're not waiting on someone, and that they
Oh,
know that that someone is not coming, or that,
mm.
that they are coming, or whatever that looks like. A lot of
Right.
times
Right.
they're not coming because they can still hear up
Oh,
until the
yeah.
very last few minutes of
Yeah.
life. They can still hear. And
Yeah.
so one of my patients, this was a few months ago, um, basically kept holding on and holding on. And, her family was like, we don't know why. And I said, is there somebody that hasn't come yet? Like, oh yeah, this family member. And I'm like, let's go tell, are they coming? No, he's got Thanksgiving
Mm.
plans in, another state. And I said, then let's go tell her. And she finally was able to completely let go within like the next 4 hours.
Wow. Wow. So what is, you explained that difference between the doula and the nurse.
Mhm.
If someone's out there is interested in it, like, what do you have to, you said a certification, how long is that? Is it something that you have to be licensed or certified, or does it depend on the state?
Yeah, it does that. So I chose to get a certification, and I will be really honest. I don't think I had a great educational experience.
Mhm.
Um, I went through, and I'm not going to say the name of the company, but
Yeah, yeah.
it was just one of those online things, and I knew as much as what they had already
Oh,
educated me,
yeah, yeah.
just because I had volunteered with hospice for a few years back in the like 2010 to 2015, somewhere in there. I had
Okay.
volunteered with hospice then. So I was very, very familiar and comfortable with it. In addition to like losing my own family members, that's how I really
Yeah,
became uniquely qualified for this.
yeah.
Um, you don't need a survey. In fact, it's not even recognized in a lot of states. Being an end of
Oh,
life doula is not recognized. If
oh.
you The states that it is recognized in, you'll have to check. It's like it is recognized in New Mexico. It
Mm,
absolutely is. And so I think it's also recognized in like Oregon and Washington state.
okay.
And so you would have to see what their education requirements are for there. And honestly, if I moved to one of those states, I would go ahead and pay to get a better education. So I
Ah,
had more education around like the comfort kit and all of that.
uh-huh.
Um, I mean, I have really good lived experience of that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
here it's not really recognized, but or I'm not going to say not really, it isn't. It's not recognized. It's not acknowledged.
Okay.
But the company that I work for does tell people that they have certified death doulas on staff. We,
Ah,
when we go in to sit with families for vigil, we have a very small vigil team that goes out and takes care of patients and families. We also tell them that that's what we are and that's what we do. And people are really interested and intrigued by it.
yeah, I would think so. That's
Yeah.
that's so interesting. what it's kind of twofold. I don't know where to put this, but you kind of mentioned it. And I'm always, this is a topic that of euthanasia
Mhm.
that has fascinated me. And it's probably been, gosh, I can't remember, 6, 7, 8 years. There was a television show about a doctor who would help people
Yes.
transition, cross over. And it's not, she didn't do it.
Mhm.
The doctor did not do it. I don't, Kill Mary, something Mary, Nurse Mary.
Mhm.
You could Google it. But
Uh-huh.
what was fascinating about the show to me was how it's a controversial topic. You know, is it moral? Is it immoral? And I can't remember Dr. Kevorkian, who used
Mhm.
to do assisted. And
Mhm.
I think what the show, what interested me about it is just, I think it's hard unless you're in that position. You have, let's say, stage 4 pancreatic cancer,
Yeah.
and you don't want to be in this human body anymore. You're done. And you have a doctor in this show, she would give them the medicine.
Yes.
And they would do it when they were ready. They'd put it in a bottle, a glass of wine, or in their food.
Mhm.
So it was just an interesting show to me because it gave me thought. Like certain countries, I believe
Mhm.
Sweden, there are certain countries that will allow euthanasia, and just how controversial it is. I know it's your opinion. What are your thoughts about euthanasia, or have you even thought about it?
Oh, sure.
What do you think?
Yeah. So, so again, I want to reiterate, hospice does not participate in euthanasia. The
Yes.
medication that we give is never in a lethal dose. It is literally to make the body comfortable for the so it can do what it naturally does. So the
Yes.
patient is not battling. If you've ever watched,
Right.
Terminal Restless. So I just want to reiterate that's not what hospice does.
Right.
And but it is a common misconception. People are like, oh, well, you drug them until they die. And I'm like, no, we don't. We
Oh,
really, really don't.
yeah.
Um, there we don't the amount of morphine that we give people is just enough to keep them comfortable. Just bear.
Gotcha.
We find the baseline of comfort and then we leave it there. We don't over
Gotcha.
medicate. So, but to go into euthanasia, um, I personally believe that everyone has that agency over themselves. And when we lose the agency of what we do with our own body, then our yes doesn't mean any more than our no does. You know what I mean?
Mm,
If my
yeah.
if my no doesn't mean anything, then my yes doesn't mean anything. And it's the same with how I choose to live my life, even if I choose not to live my life. The whole purpose of telling people that it's immoral to end your life stems way back into religion and history when people were taking their lives, and now you don't have people to donate to the church and pay their taxes.
Mm,
And so they have convinced us that it is a moral sin to take our own lives.
right.
And it just has gone through space and time that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I do not believe it is at all because it's druidic. It's the druids would, and there's many Native American cultures that also say, today is a good day to die. And it's not because they were necessarily warriors, but because they chose, this is the day I'm going to leave this world. Druids did that too. It was a conscious decision. Today is the day. Today is a good day to die. Today is the day that I am choosing to end my life. And then they would choose how they would do it.
Mm,
And the interesting thing is, and I think you and I both know this, is that a lot of belief systems around spirituality, like how we came into this life, is agreeing to this is also when we're going to leave.
yeah.
And so a lot of people know when they are in the active state of dying that this is when they're supposed to go. This is their
Yeah.
window of opportunity to go. And that many of us are born with multiple windows
Yeah.
that we can choose to, it's almost like an escape plan. So the
Yeah.
irony of this is that spiritually, we know we have windows of choice where we could potentially leave at like 16, at 28,
Right. Yeah.
or we can continue to choose to stay around until the very last window. But humanity took away our agency and our sovereignty over the greatest choice that we have. And that is, how do I choose my quality of life and the physical no longer gets to exist?
Beautiful. Yeah, it is. And I think death, I think we mentioned a little bit before we started recording. Why do you think, what's kind of your thoughts about why in society death is like this taboo subject that we don't talk about? And uh, I've heard stories or known people who won't let their kids go to a funeral, or what's the appropriate age to go to a funeral. And it's that thing where as much death is as much a part of life as birth is. But why do you think we don't want to I mean, I know why we don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
For the most part, I think we love having this physical incarnation. But what are some of your thoughts about death and why it's so taboo? We don't want to talk about it. And you have great experience in with the hospice and end of life doula. What are some of your thoughts about that? Why is it so taboo? And when do you think we should begin to teach our children about death or talk about death?
Mhm. I again, I go back to religion and control, mind control, that the programming that we have, because once death becomes a part of life, then people want that agency over the quality of the end of their life and what the end of their life looks like. And if we can't give them that, then we get the taxes, we get we get the participation in this grand facade that is society, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that has created a huge death phobia in our society. Um, I personally believe that children experience the death and dying process very early on. We just don't call it that. It's when they get the caterpillar, and they put it in a jar, and the caterpillar doesn't live because they didn't think to poke holes in it. The
Yeah.
child just experienced the dying process at the age of
Yeah.
3.
Right.
And instead of explaining that this is normal and this is what happens when you cut off the air to a living being, we
Yeah.
are like, oh, well, it's going to heaven, and Jesus needed a
Mhm.
butterfly, and we create all of these stories because we do have such a death phobic society. We do believe that there is a lot of dark negative energy around death, and there's not. Anybody who thinks that this physical existence is the prize, I'm going to ask you to go get checked, like mentally checked, because this is not the prize, man. This is the punishment. The prize is the eternal
Yeah.
existence.
Yeah.
That's the prize. Um, Great googly mooglies. Like, and that's the thing, is we think physical existence is life, and it's not. Life is beyond so much of this. And so
Yeah.
I think children, as soon as they have that first experience of,
Yeah.
instead of telling them, oh, well, we took, the dog little Spot out to a farm and he's living there
Yeah.
forever, instead of
Yeah.
telling them but fake stories,
Yeah.
teach them, because how else are they going to be able to process true grief when it happens if they don't start processing it when it happens? Children are not as fragile as we think they are,
Yeah.
and they want to. I just my personal, as a an adult child now,
Yeah.
um, I I resent being lied to about death when people tried to um, make it gentler for me. It
Mm.
Loss is loss, and it starts early. And are we doing our children a disservice of not helping them understand the loss of life in the same way that they understand the loss of a stuffed animal that got lost, or
Yeah.
their whoopee that got lost, or
Yeah.
whatever. And then all of a sudden they're 18, 19 years old and they're losing real people and they have no idea how to cope with that grief. And that creates more of the environment of death phobia and
Yeah.
more of the belief that death is somehow a failure.
Yeah.
It's just in how it's the reframe that dying and death is very much a part of the living process.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's definitely a part. And I know it's one of those things that people don't want to talk about, but I think it's one of those things that, as you said, we should talk about, and even talk about to kids,
Mhm.
age appropriate, and expose them to that. What are some of the what are some of the things that you see, with those that are transitioning and near the end of life? What are some common things, or are there no common things? Is it different for every person? Every soul has a different way. What are some of the things that are common, and what are some of the things that are different
Mhm.
based on that person?
I think I think the more common things, and it's not always every single person, because every person,
Yeah.
as they begin the transition, may not be able to verbalize this, because we do deal with a lot of people who have dementia and they may be nonverbal at
Mhm.
the end of their lives. And so, but there is the recognition of beings that are we can't see with our naked eye.
Mhm.
And they refer to them as hallucinations in medical. So they'll be like, oh, well, they're starting hallucinations. And I'm just like, God, can we choose a better word? They are they are starting the transition process. And
Mhm.
so they are seeing loved ones on the other side. They are seeing angels. One of the things that I notice about people who potentially had a fear of death is it takes them a little bit longer, and they're non-responsive for a little bit longer. And
Mhm.
so I think what I personally think is happening is they are meeting with their family members in this very neutral space in the
Mm.
ethers, or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
are perhaps already starting their life review. They are
Oh,
perhaps learning about they're kind of diving into that unconditional love. If you've ever, and I think you probably have, Jamie, based on the work that you do, if you've ever had the experience of being visited by someone who has crossed over and they've
mhm,
invited you into the energy that they live in,
mhm.
you don't want to leave. It is
Yeah,
like this, the love I can't tell you how many times I've woken up with tears streaming down my face because
yes,
the amount of
yes,
love that they
yeah.
are experiencing that we are not. And I think that people who feel like they've done wrong in their life, people who have guilt, people who have a lot of shame, people who have a lot of fear of death because we have not normalized it in our society, I
Mhm.
think it takes them longer to pass. And so the ones that I see that are lasting 5 to 7 days, sometimes 10 days from
Yeah.
the time that they become non responsive, I think that's what's happening. And what makes me think that is even when they are nonverbal, they're
Mhm.
moaning. It's almost like they're having conversations, but
Yes,
all it
yes.
sounds like is a moan or a groan to me.
Yeah,
They are reaching out. They're reaching out in front of them or above them.
yeah,
Um, and and so there's those little commonalities that I see. And then the ones that have a very healthy relationship with death, man, they're gone lickety split. Like
Oh, really?
it's like, today's the day I'm going. And then sure enough, out the door they
Yeah,
went.
yeah.
And the other thing, commonality that I notice, and this is more of a personality thing, is how they were in life is how they are in death.
Hmm.
So, and what I mean by that is if you are a social person in life, the more people you have around you, the least
Ah.
likely you're going to leave. You are hanging out for the party. And so, like, if your kids are around you, your family's around you, they're playing music, you're not going to go anywhere. But the moment that they all leave and the lights go off and it's just me and them, they are out the door. I've literally watched this more times than I can count. The family has gone. I've got the lights off. We are sitting in the silence. I've talked to them. I said, hey, family's gone for the night. I'm here with you. It's all on your terms now, like whatever you need, it's on your terms. And within 15 minutes, they're gone. It's like they've been waiting for their family to go.
Yeah.
And sometimes family has been gone and they're just kind of waiting, like, are they coming back? Like, what's going on? And then I'll be sitting there and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute. I haven't heard you breathe for 30. Did you just slip out the back door? Like,
Wow.
where'd you go? And then I'll find out from the family that was what they were like. They wouldn't make big exits. If they were like at a block party or something, they would really just kind of and disappeared and gone back home without saying.
Interesting.
So they leave with no drama. They're just out the door.
Yeah.
And I'm left going, wow, that was fast. Okay, let me start the process. Can I talk just real quickly about what we do at the end of life? One of the things that the end of life doula does.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is really, really beautiful. So aside from giving last rites, as I mentioned earlier, I taught, how to give last rites. We also assist once the nurse has come back and has declared the official TOD. We help give their final bath. We bathe them, and it's called an angel bath. And so we change out their brief. We, 'cause a lot of times people are wearing briefs at the end, adult briefs. We get warm water and we put lotion on them, and we give them a full body bed bath, and we style their hair, and we put them in a very comfortable traveling outfit. And we do it it's a sacred ritual of honoring the vessel that held their soul for as long as it did. And then our company personally, we stay with them until the transport team from the funeral home comes and gets them. And then we escort them down to the van. We never leave them alone. Once they've left, we don't leave their vessel. So we bathe them and we honor them, and we treat them with the sacredness that they deserve at the end of life. And then once they're in the transport van, then we leave.
Wow.
So
Okay. Angel bath.
Yeah, an angel bath.
Wow.
That's part of the work we do.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And I had never thought of it that way, of honoring the vessel.
Yeah.
I love that. That makes sense to me when you put it that way, of honoring the vessel.
Yeah.
So,
and what we'll do too is we invite the family to participate if they want to. So we have had, and sometimes I had a family of nurses, and they're like, we got this. So they did their own angel bath, and they played music that she loved, and they did all the things, and they did her nails. And I will never forget that one either. I had to tell you, it's so funny. They put her in a bra. And I said, what are you doing? And they said, oh, she would have never left the house without a bra. She wouldn't even leave her bedroom without a bra. So we put her in a bra, and I immediately told all of my team, I'm like, if you all are on my hospice team when I'm on hospice and you think for 1 minute you're putting me in a bra for my last trip, we got another thing coming, people. Like, I will haunt you your dying day. Don't you dare put me in a bra. It was but that's, sometimes the family participates, sometimes the family doesn't want to, but
Yeah.
that is another way to end the death phobia, is to
Mm,
take that time to love the vessel that
yeah.
held everything that was in that lifetime. And so
Yeah.
I've had family participate, and I've had others that are like, I can't, I gotta go. I've had family
Yeah.
say, we don't want to come back and even see them. I don't have a judgment about any of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
according to what is comfortable for them. Some of them, they've already said their goodbyes. The anticipatory grief that happens when your loved one develops dementia.
Yeah.
Because you grieve in stages with dementia. You grieve in stages with
Ah,
cancer. And so a lot of them are like, I've already said my goodbyes. I've said it 17 times. Thank you for taking
yeah.
care of them. And, I'll see you
Wow.
at the funeral. And that's the other thing, is we tend to go to the funerals a lot of the time, to honor the life and celebrate the life with the family. And I
Have
love
you,
that part too. Mhm.
that's just phenomenal. It just tells the work of the end of life doula, like you see it all the way through. And I love that. I just imagine being around those that are end of life and transitioning.
Mhm.
Have you had yourself any what maybe we might consider a mystical
Yes.
experience with those that have transitioned? I would say, of course, but
Mhm.
you never know. But I'm just curious if they've tapped you on the shoulder, played with your hair, just any type. Well, I call them mystical
Right.
experiences.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced any of that, or is it because you don't know them in a way that you wouldn't?
Right. I've so I've not really had that. I've had families report back to me that like a patient died at like 12:02, and her grandson woke up at 12:05 feeling the presence of his grandmother. And
Mm,
so I've had that reported back to me, but I did actually have a mystical experience aside from the one last night, with
uh,
but
uh,
or this morning. The one I will probably remember till my dying day,
yeah.
is I was sitting vigil with a woman who had like 50s and 60s music blaring on her TV. It was blaring. And I'm like, this is not how we go out. Like, this is not setting the scene for saying goodbye. Right. And so I begin to I'm turning it down a little bit. And I'm like, and I talk to them. I go up. The first thing I do is I put my hand on their shoulder and I say, hey, my name is Indira. I'm with such and such hospice company. I'm going to be with you tonight. This is all on your time. I am just here to make sure that you are comfortable and you have everything you need. And then I go and I find myself a little corner of the room to sit in. I typically take work with me because I'm in chaplain program, and I always have charting to do. And so anyway, I did all of that with this woman, and this music it was ridiculous. Like, it's the Beach Boys, and it's Jan and Dean, and it's the Beatles, and it's really obnoxious. And I was like, let me just see what else is on that I can either take my mind off of what I'm doing right now, or just find something gentler, for like the
Yeah,
TV.
yeah.
And the electric paper towel holder, dispenser in the bathroom where no one was, began to dispense paper towels. And I was like, I literally got the remote in my hand, and I'm like, okay. 60s it is. It's fine. If this is what I'm sorry. You know what? Let me just put this remote down. Like, I'm just
Put my music back on.
I mean, I'm just scrolling through the guide. The music's
Yeah,
still playing, but she's like, "Don't you dare! Like,
that's
don't even
right.
think about changing that." And I
Oh,
will
I love it.
never forget that till my
I
dying day.
love
It
it.
was the funniest thing, and I was like, "Oh, you know what? Shannon Dean's fine. The Beatles, great. It's okay. We got this." Like, far be it for me to tell you what is appropriate for you to watch when you
That's
decide to leave this
right.
world.
Oh,
So
well,
yeah,
at least they had a sense of humor. Like, I would look at that and think, okay, it's funny. Like, leave
the
my shit
bathroom
alone,
the bathroom was completely dark. It was ridiculous. I was like, is that me? You know what?
Yeah.
I think we're good here. I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah, I didn't mean to offend.
Right,
60s
right.
it is, yeah. And I so appreciated her sense of humor with that.
Yeah.
And she ended up passing about 3 hours after I left. So about 9 in the morning.
Wow.
I remember that. And her music was still on.
Oh my
From what the
gosh.
nurse said. The nurse said she messaged me after and she was like, "Hey, I just got here. Was she listening to music all night?" And I'm like, "Oh dear God, yes. Let me tell you all about it."
Yeah, yeah. I love it. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I love it.
So how we
Oh,
are in life is how we are in the transition process as well.
mm,
So how,
mm,
if we were social, then we're not going to leave as long as our family is there. If
yeah.
if we liked 60s music, then please
Yep,
don't set up a sacred
yep,
ritual. Leave
yep.
this, that is your sacred ritual. And that's part of it, of getting out of the way of thinking that death has to look like something, that it has to look like a quiet room that that has candles lit. No, her dying process was personal to her. She had the music playing that she loved.
I love that. That's like freaking cool to me.
Yeah.
I love that. And as a medium, I get that question, not a lot, but I do get it quite often, like, did they know I was there,
Yes.
when they were transitioning?
Yeah.
Or how come, Jamie, I've been there for days and I'm with them, and then I go use the bathroom and they decide to pass?
Because they were
You know,
social.
yeah. So
Yeah.
hearing you say that social, or like everyone's gone, so they're
Mhm.
like, oh, okay.
I can
But
go
I get
home
that.
now.
Yeah, yeah, I get that question a lot. That
Yeah.
one of them is, did they know we were there? Because so many times they are nonverbal or sedated or medicated, and so they're not able to talk. And so, I've been with a couple of people that were transitioning, and I'm like, I know they can hear me,
Mhm,
I
mhm.
know they can. But it's one of those questions as a medium you get quite often. And hearing you about their personality, or everyone was in the room. I just had one a couple of days ago with a
Mhm.
reading, and the lady's like, everybody's there.
Yeah.
Everyone's there.
Yeah.
I go use the bathroom, grandma leaves. Why? When I leave,
Yeah.
everyone else is still there. Why is it when I leave? And I'm like, well, maybe there's something about your relationship or how you may handle it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I think personally, just in what I've seen, if the most important person in the room to them has walked out, then the party's over. And it's not to discount
Yeah,
the other people in the room. It is
yeah.
just simply that person was the one that they had the deepest connection to. And if they're
Mm,
gone, then I can go.
wow, I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, Indira, thank you. What a beautiful conversation. Is there any parting words, anything you'd like to tell people about becoming an end of life doula, anything about death, just that kind of any closing thoughts that you would like for folks to know?
I would say if this is something you're interested in, start by volunteering with a hospice company. Hospice companies always have volunteer services available.
Hmm.
Start getting really comfortable with those who are, because if you are on hospice, you typically have about 6 months left, 6 months or less left. Start getting comfortable with the loss, start getting comfortable with watching cognitive and physical decline, start getting comfortable with people who have dementia. Just start getting really comfortable with that by volunteering. And you can find a hospice company and just say, I want to volunteer an hour of time a week to see a patient. And you get to pick the day and the time and all of that. You get to pick if it's a male or female patient. You get to pick if they're dementia or not. Like you have all the choices, and
Okay.
start there. And then And then I would say start reading books on grief, because that is a huge part. Understanding grief and the dying process. There's a book called On Death and Dying that's really, really good. It's really heady. So I would say maybe read the abridged version of that. Start demystifying death for yourself. Start demystifying the end of life for yourself, the transition, the decline. And then after that, if it's still something that you are interested in, then find a really reputable company to go through. Or if you are in a state where end of life doulas are recognized, find out what their processes are and start there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I've learned a lot. I'm fascinated. Maybe fascinated is too strong, but I am about death because I do think maybe one, as a medium, people a lot of times think that mediumship is about death. It's all about death, and it's so much more than that. If anything, mediumship has taught me it's not about death.
It's about life.
Yeah, it's about life. And so I always say I think we need to change the framework of what mediumship is really about, because it's not about death. We may connect with those who have transitioned, but one, I don't believe they're dead. They've just
Right.
walked out of one room and walked into another. So
That's
I feel
exactly it. Yeah.
yeah. And mediumship has proven to me over the years that they are alive. I
Very
know
much.
that. I don't have to think that or hope that. I'm really convinced of that. And I think this has been a beautiful conversation about that. And I appreciate you coming on, joining me today. Thank you
Very
so
happy to do it.
much.
Yeah.
And for everyone else, don't forget to tune into Spirit Speaker Casey podcast on my YouTube channel and on Spotify. And last, if anybody would like to reach you, Indira,
Mhm.
have questions, anything, how can they reach you? What's the best way for folks? You're an excellent resource. So I feel like there may be a few people out there that like to contact you. How would they get in touch with you?
So we're going to use probably my business email address, which is readings, readings with Indira. It's the one that I set up when I started doing readings with Indira at gmail.com. And just reach out to me and say, I'm interested in whatever it is. And if I can guide you, I will. And if I can't, I'll get you in touch with the right people.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I will see everyone next time.